Hey, welcome back to the movie shelf, where I take a movie off the shelf based on your suggestions. Most of the time, if I don't get a suggestion, I'll pick one myself. And we review it, and then we put it up against all the other films in history. So this is number two, and my brother is the requester of this one. He says Poseidon Adventure. So that's what we're going to do. 1972's The Poseidon Adventure, directed by Ronald Neame. Now, Ronald Neame was just the director, and I don't mean just the director because it was great. But this is really more of an Irwin Allen, the classic disaster film producer. This is more of his vision than it is Neame's, but Neame was a great British director who I intend to deep dive because there's a lot there. But there's also a lot to Irwin Allen, and he if you're unfamiliar, Lost in Space was his project. I believe Land of the Giants was his project, and I know that Towering Inferno later on, after this film, was his baby projects. So knowing that this is it's not a true story, rather it's an adaptation of Paul Gallico's fictional novel from 1969. When I say that it's fiction, I might be fibbing a little bit, because I believe that Gallico was on the RMS Queen Mary in 1937 when a rogue wave flipped it on its side. It didn't go upside down, but clearly, if he was on that, it definitely inspired the story. I'm ashamed that I don't have a copy of this on Blu-ray. I blame it on the fact that I can't find it on 4K yet. But for seriously, probably under $10, you can get this on Amazon. Why wouldn't I? So I plan to get it on the movie shelf very soon. That said, I also ordered the book on Audible. The book was, like I said, in 1969, and it's it's narrated by Dylan Baker. I'm not familiar with who that is, but I'm definitely going to give it a listen to see how it compares up against the film, because I like to do that. All right, so this film almost did not get made. Okay, Irwin Allen's home studio, 20th Century Fox, didn't want to fund it. All right, they were under new leadership. He was given a tight $5 million budget as it was. It actually took 2 years of struggling to get this film greenlit. So 2 weeks before principal photography, 20th Century Fox president Gordon Stolberg told Irwin Allen that the film was not going to be made and was not going to go forward with it. So Irwin left the building. He was crying, and he came back and devised a plan with Neame to ask for half of the money. So they went back and asked for $2.5 million and said that they would come up with the rest somehow. This is where the story gets a little bit interesting. So he goes to his friends, I believe Cheryl Corwin and Steve Brody, and they asked them for essentially help getting this movie funded. And they said, sure, just stop bugging us at our card game, whatever, leave us alone. We'll fund whatever you need. So he went back and he said, all right, I got the funding, let's do this. So the studio agreed to do it, which is pretty amazing. Now, if you have not seen this film, I need you to do it. I need you to fix that, because this is truly one of the first great disaster pictures that was done properly. And it still holds up today. I mean, I can see elements of this film that made it into the Titanic, even when that film was made in 1997. So definitely has a lot of inspirational aspects to it. All right, so this film is a disaster film. Like I said, it's the SS Poseidon gets hit by a rogue wave, 90-foot rogue wave, and flips the ship over. So it's 100% capsized, upside down. And this has one of the best ensemble casts. Let me just tell you some of the names: Gene Hackman, Shelley Winters, Carol Lindley, Ernest Borgnine, Stella Stevens, Red Buttons, Roddy McDowell, Leslie Nelson. Let's start there. Leslie Nelson delivers the first line of this movie, and I'm going to tell you guys right now, it's really hard to take him seriously after the career that he went on to have after this film. He says his line, and I'm like, we're in a Naked Gun movie. Like, this is totally a Naked Gun movie. It's not, but it ends up being quite serious. And he does a really good job as the captain of the ship. But so we have a ship that's capsized now, and we're presuming that everybody that's not in this particular ballroom that we're now seeing has perished, and these are the survivors. And the crux of the situation is, do they leave or do they stay and wait to be rescued? Well, Gene Hackman, he is a preacher in this film. He's a preacher that not quite right with God, it seems like. And he's kind of, his character's a little bit off-putting, I would say. He's kind of mean. He's very hostile, and he's very he lacks patience, even in situations that would easily have gone better had he been just a little bit more patient. But it's Gene Hackman. He had just won Best Actor for French Connection, and so, you know, he's amazing in this film. But there is that. So if you're looking for, this is not the guy that you would want to be like, oh, I want to tell everything to. It's not that kind of preacher. He's disturbing a little bit. All right, so a couple things I want to mention is there's one scene in this ballroom where once the ship flips over, everybody's falling, and Ernie Orsatti, I believe was his name. He was a stuntman turned actor, and there's a scene where he's hanging from the ceiling and he has to fall like 30 or 40 feet into the light fixture that was the ceiling. And it's all glass, and he's ready to do it, and he's like, I don't want to do this. I'm an actor now. I need a stunt double. And they're like, we don't have time and we don't have money. We have to stay on budget. You are doing this. So he did it. And it turns out it is actually one of the most amazing, terrifying scenes in film history up to that point. So he's probably lucky and glad that he took part of that. But it's funny that just because he had turned actor, he wanted a stunt double to cover that for him. So we have 10 people that decide to follow this preacher up the Christmas tree. And now, remind you, the ship is upside down, so they're going deck by deck to try and stay above the waterline. And that in itself is a bit terrifying. So you have all these people staying behind, and they get washed out. Spoiler alert, they get washed out. And then we're following the 10 for the rest of the way. Now, where do I go from here? They're going deck by deck, and every deck that they climb, you can see the water line behind them. So they're just really being chased by water. I will say that Shelley Winters in this film, she's the only one in this film that was nominated for an Oscar. The film did win 2 Oscars. We'll cover that later. But she was nominated for her acting in this film. Now, she plays Belle, the fat lady, who doesn't think that she can do anything. And she actually gained 35 pounds to take this role on. And there's a classic scene of heroism where she has to save Hackman's character from drowning, and she's a former Olympic swimmer and female champion swimmer. And so she jumps in the water, and she actually insisted, Shelley Winters insisted that she did the scene herself and not have a stunt double. So you can see, I mean, how hard of a scene it would be to do. And she is said to have held her breath for upwards of 3.5 minutes during the filming of this scene in this film. Um, Other interesting facts on Shelley Winters is she actually used to live with Marilyn Monroe, and she's rumored to have taught Marilyn Monroe how to be pretty. Shelley Winters was fantastic. She's in a number of things. I can't get to everything on everybody, but she did die in 2006. She was 85, and most people don't know that she was actually Laura Dern's godmother. So other characters, she was paired up with Jack Albertson, who died in 1981 at age of 74, and he was best known for being Grandpa in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So there's that. Other talented performers in this film: Ernest Borgnine, Oscar winner. He is creepy, and I mean, in this movie, he's very hard to like as a character. Kind of looks like a Muppet a little bit, but he was responsible for such things as McHale's Navy, Willard, which I hope to do at some point. And I think he died in 2012 at age 92. So a lot of these actors and actresses have passed, and I'll try and tell you if that's the case. But because I like to talk about the actors and what they're doing now, you can tell from the last film that was more actor centric than it was based on even the story. Because I figure I want to leave a lot of the story to you guys, who, if you haven't seen the film, or if you want to rewatch it, you're not just listening to somebody who just told you word for word what happened in the story. But I like to tell a little bit information about the film. Red Buttons played Martin. He's a comedian, so, and his role is really understated in this film. And I kind of liked it, but I also I don't regret that he's in the film. But there was a choice made for an actor that was going to play this role that actually fits the description of the character perfectly, and that was Gene Wilder. But due to scheduling conflicts with other things, Gene couldn't pair up with Jack Albertson for a second film, and he just couldn't do it. So that sucks. But Red Buttons, he passed away in 2006. He was 87. So a lot of these actors had really long, great lives, great careers, and a lot of them did, dozens and dozens of films after this one. So if you like any of their performances, chances are you look up that actor, you'll be able to find plenty of stuff both before and after. Stella Stevens played the character opposite Borgnine. She was a former prostitute and he was a police officer. So you can see where that relationship would be a little bit disturbed from the beginning. And I'll let you watch the dynamic of that relationship, but it's pretty great dynamic, and really crucial to whether you care about what's going to happen with these people or not. You would know Stella Stevens from the Bing Crosby film Say One For Me. She was also a Playboy Playmate, and I believe she won Playmate of the Month in January of 1960, and her issue is actually one of the most highly sought after issues in history, and she's actually still alive. She's 83 or 84 years old at this point, but she is suffering from dementia and is in a clinic being treated for that. So that's her. Oscars we talked about. This film was nominated for 9 Oscars, I believe. It won 2. It won Best Song. Oh, and I can't remember the song name. Damn it. I thought I was doing so good on my facts. I can't remember the song name, but it won for Best Song, and it won for Visual Effects. I want to see what the others were in that year because I take some exception. I think some of the effects, I mean, for the time, for 1972, they were all good. However, I'm watching when the ship flips over, and I'm just like, I don't know. It seems like you could do better with some of those shots. This film was $5 million, you guys, and they stayed under budget and actually finished 2 days early. That said, came out in 72. It was the highest grossing film of 1973, earning well over $100 million, which is 20 times what they invested in it. And I didn't realize this, but Gene Hackman has retired. He has not acted since 2004. And that to me is straight up insanity. Because he is legendary. Um, I've never thought of him as like one of the greatest actors of all time. But if you look at his resume and what he's done and how he's performed in those films, I mean, he's legit. But we haven't seen him on screen since 2004. I hope he's enjoying his retirement. Now it brings us to a point in time where we give a score for this film. Highest considerations based on the fact that this was one of the first pictures of its kind, true disaster classic, from the master Irwin Allen. I'm gonna go 88.3. 88.3 is the score for this film. And here's why I'm doing points. There are so many films over history that I'm going to be doing here that I don't want to have like 50 all at 82 or, whatever. So I'm going to give points. So 88.3. We'll see you next time here on The Movie Shelf.